children had to be content with this, so Fiongula and Hugh, Fiacre and Con spent the next weeks travelling southwards across Ireland with their stepmother and a small train of her attendants. When Aoife guided the chariot, she was preoccupied with the horses and said little to the children. They stood beside her, ducking away from her snapping cloak. Sometimes, when she slowed to let the four of them walk along the rough track, or when the company camped, the children found her observing them with dark, speculative eyes. But even then Aoife had few words for them. They reached the shores of Lough Derrivara, a shining sheet of water beneath the peak of mount called Lochion, and here Aoife called a halt to rest the horses. Although it was early in the day, she had the animals unharnessed and set the gaze under the eyes of the servants. After the rest of the company had moved off, she summoned the children to the edge of the water. "Into the lake and wash off the journey's grime," said Aoife. The boys hesitated, but Fiongula indicated that they should obey, remembering her father's tone when they had balked earlier. She and the other children stripped and clambered shivering through the shore reeds into the chill waters of the lake. Fiongula glanced back at her stepmother. She had knelt on the grass, apparently examining some small flowers that grew there. A moment later, Fiongula looked again. Aoife was standing, her arms were raised to the sky, and it seemed to answer the incomprehensible words she chanted. The wind rose and the clouds raced and boiled in the blue. Then she dropped her hands again, and at once the wind died and the waters ceased their dancing. She turned to the lake, where the children had splashed now, floated 4 white swans. Their eyes were dark blue, of the children of Lear. "An evil deed, stepmother," cried one of the birds in the light voice of Fiongula. "I cannot undo it," said Aoife, and it seemed that her rage had been replaced by remorse. She stared at the swans for long moments. Tears coursed down her cheeks. "What is the term of our captivity?" Aoife's hands twisted slowly together as she told them the terrible term of the spell she had made. "Ah, children," she said, 300 years here on the waters of Derrivara, and 300 years in the north on the sea between Erin and Scotland, and 300 years in the western ocean by the island of Innisglora, and none shall release you until the woman of the south be mated with the man of the north. I cannot undo the spell, although I would now, if I could. But I can give you this. You will keep your human speech and memory, so that the enchantment will not wholly destroy you, and the music of your singing will be of a beauty never heard on earth before." She strode away from the shore. The swan children heard her giving orders that the horses be harnessed, that the party move on. Then the bronze-bound chariot wheels clattered into the distance, and the shouts of the servants faded. And the swans were alone, with the lisping of the water on the shore and soughing of the wind amongst the reeds. Weeks went by. The 4 swans floated in the still waters, sometimes bending their long necks to see their white reflection and their moving images of clouds behind them. The great birds grieved and waited, for they were chained to this lake by Aoife's spell. One day the earth trembled with the drumming of hoofs, and a mountain company drew up to the shore. It was the children's father and his people, riding in search of them. Fiongula hailed him. Hearing his daughter's voice, Lur came to the water's edge, where the swans were floating. He listened to the children, and he wept on hearing their tale.